Hey, and welcome back everybody as we go into the battle for Baldur's Gate together. And the Commander Legends set that's coming out on June 10th. Once again, we're doing a pre-release event here at Caffeinated Gamers and at your local gaming store on the 3rd. That weekend, June 3rd, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Well, we are pretty deep into the reveals for the cards in the set. So we're going to start right away with the white cards. Our first one here today is the Archivist of Ogma. A 2-mana, 2/2 halfling cleric with flash that says whenever an opponent searches their library, you gain 1 life and draw a card. I definitely think that works pretty well with most commander decks, just because your opponents are always searching through their library. The better their deck is, the more they're searching their library, so it makes sense that you get a card draw off of it, and the life gain by itself is just kind of an added bonus. But what I think is that you would want to trigger something with that life gain, so whenever you gain a life, something else happens. So if you combo that right, I think this is a really good card. Even if you don't, though, you get a card draw every time they search the library, so you may not be getting the search, but you're getting the card draw. And being able to flash this in right when someone's searching the library, I think is the best thing to do. So you would stack it on an ability. So say your opponent on their turn, take the Streets of New Capenna cards that we already know about. Say that there was, they played Obscura Storefront, or one of those lands that starts the library for another one. So they play it, then it triggers its own ability to be sacrificed to search the library. You gain a life and search the library for a, whatever land. In this case, they would play that land, the ability would trigger, but before it resolves, you would say, okay, I'll respond to that by playing the Archivist of Ogma for 2 mana on your turn, and so it's a 2/2. And so it plays first, then the ability of the land would trigger to search, then the ability of Ogma would trigger and say, okay, well, since you are now searching your library, I will trigger my Archivist of Ogma's ability triggers. It's not a May effect, so it triggers regardless, but it's nice if you can remember the ability. So you would say, okay, this triggers, I gain 1 life and draw 1 card as they search their library for whatever it is they want. So you've established a 2/2, which isn't much of a threat, but it is a board presence. And then you get to get your card draw and life gain on your opponent's turn, which is really good. You've guaranteed one of them happening, so at the very least, this card has replaced itself in your hand. One of the things I always like to evaluate is hand advantage. It's not really something that is, I think, paid a lot of attention to, especially with a lot of newer players, because it's not the obvious advantage to have. But having card advantage to me is a big deal in Commander, because it means you have more things you can do. Maybe it's responses to your opponent's plays, maybe it's an answer to a threat that's been established, or maybe it's just your own threat that you can establish. Either way, you have them all in your hand, and of course it also increases the chance that you're not going to miss a land drop on your turn, so that's also good. So having pretty decent card advantage is something that I think is overlooked, but this satisfies at least replacing itself. So you're not losing out of something if you wait to use the ability properly. So I think that's really good. The next card I want to talk about is Ascend from Avernus. This is a 3 white and then X generic sorcery. Return all creatures and planeswalker cards with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and then you exile the spell. That's really good, especially for white. It's typical for white to do something like that. And white cards tend to have the best board wipes. So maybe you're the one who wiped the board before and you had to get rid of your own good stuff. You would play this and get ideally everything back, and for this to pull back Planeswalkers is pretty impressive. So this is an excellent card also. I love to start off our day strong. Looking at these cards and being excited about all of them is a great change of pace, so yay. Next we have the Beckoning Will-O-Wisp. This is a 3 mana 1/3 spirit with flying, and it has the ability that reads, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you choose an opponent, and creatures attacking the last chosen player gets +1 power. So that's really good, because it also doesn't say creatures you control. So if you're playing in a multiplayer format like Commander, then this ends up incentivizing someone to attack. We saw a card similar to this in Streets of New Capenna with Public Enemy, where you enchanted a creature and every other creature on the board had to attack the controller of that creature until the enchantment went away or the creature went away, either way. So I think that this is a pretty funny card. Whether or not it's good, I think probably not so much. It's a 3 mana 1/3 with flying, and you do want it to have something else there. So you're not excited to play it, but you're hoping that the 1 power increase is enough to incentivize people to attack a different player. Next, we have Crystal Dragon, a 6 mana, 2 white, 4 generic, 4/4 dragon that can go on an adventure for 2 mana at sorcery speed, return target artifact, enchantment, or legendary card from your graveyard to your hand. And then the creature form is a 4/4 flying vigilance. So the sorcery adventure is a 2 mana spell, and the creature itself is 6. The 2 mana adventure is pretty good, and a 6 mana 4/4 flying vigilance is standard for dragons. Dragons, I tend to budget 6 mana for a dragon, so that makes sense. It's just a weaker dragon than I would want to play for 6 mana. But it's not a bad card, and it is nice to see more dragons in a Dungeons & Dragons set, so yay. Next, we have the Great Sword of Tyr, which is a 2 mana equipment artifact that whenever a equipped creature attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on it and tap up to 1 target creature defending player controls, and it's a 1 white mana equip. You know, I think all in all this card isn't good. I think it's just too slow of an equipment. I like counters being added on, but it doesn't do anything else. You're not getting trample, vigilance, flying. So I think overall this equipment is probably not good enough for you to want to run in a constructed situation, but in a draft situation I can see this being a pretty good card. Alright, next we have the Guardian Naga, a 7 mana 5 generic 2 white 5/6 Naga that can go on an adventure at instant speed for 3 mana that says exile target artifact or enchantment, and creature form is a 5/6 vigilance. As long as it's your turn, you prevent all damage that would be dealt to Guardian Naga. Not bad. A threat that has to be answered on your turn. It limits what your opponents can do because they have to answer this threat on your turn, which I like. And then it also can answer a threat at instant speed on your opponent's turn. So I just think that's kind of funny. It's like, well, you have to remove my creature on my turn, but I can remove something on your turn. So I think that's pretty good. Alright, next we have the Horn of Valhalla, a 2 mana equipment. It can go on an adventure at sorcery speed for 2 white and X generic, where you create X 1/1 soldier creature tokens. And then its equipment ability is a 3 mana equip cost. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each creature that you control. We've seen cards like this before. Not to say that's not good in a draft situation, but in constructed it does. The equipment is pretty slow. The flooding the board with soldiers is probably also too slow, but it's nice that after the 2 mana cost you get a 1/1 for every other mana you tap, so at least you can do something with your mana if you didn't have anything else to do with it on your turn. So I think the card overall is probably too slow, and the equipment isn't exciting enough to justify, because you're looking for an equipment that gives something besides just a buff strictly. You're looking for a keyword if you can, and ideally one of those keywords would be flying, trample, especially if you're getting buffed up. If you're increasing the power of your creature, you want to also tack on trample if it doesn't already have it. So I think just overall, I think by itself this one is too slow for constructed, but I can see it run in draft. But even in draft, this is not one of your first picks, which is a shame since this is a rare, but that's just my take on the card. Next we have the Icewind Stalwart, a 4 mana tiefling warrior. It's a 3/3 that has, when Icewind Stalwart enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target non-warrior creature you control, and then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So you'd want to combo this with a warrior that you have that has an enter the battlefield effect, and best case scenario, it is your commander. So something worth noting. Next we have a card that lets me roll a d20, which makes me excited. I always have a d20 on me. That's Dungeons & Dragons in a nutshell. You always carry your polyhedral set dice, and a d20 just comes in that. So Lysel's Acrobatics, a 4 mana instant. Exile all non-token creatures you control, and then roll a d20. Alright, so you have only two different effects that could happen, which is not something we're super used to. We're used to there being a 1 to 9, a 10 to 19, and then a nat 20, because in Dungeons & Dragons, if you roll a 20 naturally without adding anything to it, if it was just a 20, that's the number you're looking at on the dice, then you deserve something really cool to happen, because that's hard to roll. It's 1 in 20 chance. Granted, everything is 1 in 20 chance, but the idea is supposed to be that you roll the highest number possible on the die, and it was super not likely. But let's see what this card does. On a 1 and 9, you return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Okay, so for 4 mana, here's how I would say you would want to play this if that was the effect you were getting. Your opponent's attacking you, and you use all of your non-token creatures to block. And before the damage step happens, you cast this spell. Since it is at instant speed, it can happen before damage, where you remove all the creatures that you had, you put them into exile, and so when the damage step happens, no one is dealt damage. They don't deal damage to your creatures, since there are no creatures to be dealt damage to. The blocks still go through, because you already declared them as blockers, and their creatures survive because, of course, your creatures weren't able to deal damage either during the damage step, since they were exiled before that happened. So that way you can at least protect everything. You protect yourself, protect your creatures. Okay, what about 10 to 20? Instead, return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control, then exile them again, return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's controls at the beginning of the next end step. Okay, so in this case, the timing would still probably be about the same. You blank them out, so that means they're exiled and come back immediately. And then you exile them again, and they come back at the end step. So what I would say is that this is really good if your board is full of enter the battlefield effects. Otherwise, the blinking is unnecessary. So you really want to make sure that they have ETBs when you're playing this, because a 10 to 20 is a 50% chance of being rolled. So having enter the battlefield effects on your cards, at least possibly trigger, is still really good. Okay, next we have Legion Loyalty. Now this is a 2 white, 6 generic enchantment. Creatures you control have Myriad. Oh, that's really good. I love this enchantment. That's so good. 8 mana though. Okay, and white, does it, I mean, it has mana ramp, I guess. What a great enchantment. I'm thinking you probably want this in a Dragon or Angel deck, because you want the creature tokens that are being created through Myriad to have real threat, even if they're being exiled at the end of combat. So again, this is every creature that has Myriad would trigger when they attack. So you attack an opponent, and then the creature that had Myriad would say, okay, now I'm going to create a token, copy of myself, that is tapped and attacking each other opponent. So you would say, say you're playing a 4-player game where you're up against 3 players, which is like about typical. And you attack one of your opponents with a 4/4 Angel that has Myriad. Well, now I'm going to create, since it has Myriad, and it's an Angel with flying, so that's always helpful too with Myriad. So my 4/4 Angel with Myriad is attacking opponent 1. It now generates for my other 2 opponents 1 token apiece, and then 1 token's attacking that opponent, opponent number 2, and then another one is attacking opponent number 3. So it's just a way to be able to attack everybody and only risk one of your creatures, because the tokens are being exiled anyways. If they get blocked, they get blocked. It's your 4/4 Angel original copy that you don't want blocked, or you don't at least want to die. So you attack the opponent that is least likely to kill your 4/4 Angel, and then it creates a token copy to attack your other opponents. So it's just a way to be able to safely attack them and hopefully deal damage, or maybe incentivize them to block and kill one of their weaker cards. So this is a really good enchantment, especially if you play it right. It's just 8 mana is really rough to work with. So I'm thinking you probably want to mana ramp, because turn 8 is pretty late in the game to be playing stuff. So, alright. Next we have the Pegasus Guardian at 6 mana. It can go on an adventure at instant speed for 2 mana, where you exile target creature that you control, and then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Fair, that's a blink effect for 2 mana. Alright. So it's a 6 mana 3/3 with flying at the beginning of your end step. If a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, create a 1/1 white Pegasus creature token with flying. Okay. 6 mana though. I think this is incredibly slow. So, I know it's supposed to combo with blinks and such, but it's just incredibly slow. I don't think it's a worthwhile card to run. But, you know, it's nice to have some blink synergy. Alright, and the last one I want to talk about is the Veteran Soldier. I can't remember if we've talked about this in a previous video. This is a 2 mana background enchantment that gives all commander creatures that you own the ability, whenever this creature attacks a player, if no opponent has more life than that player, for each opponent, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token that's tapped and attacking that player. So that's pretty good because the tokens sit on the battlefield still after combat if they weren't blocked. Just want to make sure I talk about this card. Not excited about it. Just wanted to talk about it. Getting 1/1 tokens that are tapped and attacking just immediately puts them at risk, which is why I'm like, yeah, well, it's probably meant to go in a token deck, so I'm thinking you probably didn't want them to die, but they're 1/1s, so when that happens, unless you have a way to de-incentivize the blocking, or to scare your opponents away from blocking, your opponents are more likely just going to block and kill the thing. So, alright, and that does it for the white cards. Next, that gets us to blue. Alright, we start with Cone of Cold. I'd be surprised if this wasn't a reprint from the Forgotten Realms set, because Cone of Cold is a classic spell in Dungeons & Dragons, but let's look at this card as if it wasn't, because I don't really know if it was in the original, in the original Forgotten Realms set, sorry. The Cone of Cold is a 4-mana spell, which I'm going to tell you right now is already kind of pricey, but let's see what happens when you roll that d20. On a 1-9, tap all creatures your opponents control. Okay, yeah, that's a pretty strong 1-9 effect. Sorcery speed makes it a little less exciting, but yeah, no good. A 10-19, tap all creatures your opponents control, and those creatures don't untap during their control's next untap step. Now that's really good. If you nat 20, tap all creatures your opponents control. Those creatures don't untap during their controller's next untap step, and until your next turn, creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Oh my gosh, I love this spell. Okay, it's worth it to run. It's worth it. I love it. Alright, cool. Let's move on to the next one. Displacer Kitten. A 4-mana 2/2 cat beast. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile up to one target non-land permanent you control, and then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. This just reminds me of, I don't know how many Marvel fans we have out there. I have to imagine a lot of you, because I know I am. But this reminds me of the cat that was actually not a cat, that just ate the Tesseract and then spit it back out later. I think that's what this reminds me of. I think I see some tentacles involved here. Like, that's what it reminds me of, is that was the thing that just ate the Tesseract, and then at the end of the movie, at the end of the credits, I think it was, boom, just right back on your desk. I love it. It's cute. Well, I will say, though, it's 4-mana 2/2. It's not, I don't think for the Blink effect it's even that good of a card. I don't think it's a good card, but what a cute card, though, right? Next, we have Elminster's Simulacrum? Man, I feel like I should know that word. Alright, it's a 6-mana instant, which is very pricey, but it's a mythic rare, so it's got to do something good. For each opponent, you create a token that's a copy of up to one target creature that player controls. Yeah, I mean, that's a good card, I guess. It's 6 mana, but it's more than one copy, and ideally you're copying really good stuff. Okay, I'm going to say that this is my take. I think this is one of the first cards I'm looking at that's not good in draft format. It's way too expensive, but I think it's really good in Constructed. I think it's a really good card in Constructed. Because you're going up against opponents who have handcrafted their decks. Every card in their deck is there for a freaking reason. And your hope as a player running a card like this is that what cards they're running isn't specific to their decks. They're just generally good cards. So for 6 mana, you're copying your opponent's stuff. And even if you target only 2 opponents, even if 2 of the opponents that you target have something good, and then one of them has something, okay, I'll just pick this up with it. As long as you're getting your 6 mana worth of value out of what you're picking up, and they're good for your deck, then I'd say that's a win, and I'd say this is a really good card. The problem in draft is your opponents aren't necessarily excited about every pick going in their deck. They sometimes just need cards. So that makes a 6 mana instant much less exciting. Also, this being an instant speed is really good because you would want to play this. So just to kind of say you're a player 1 and you've got 3 opponents. You would play this at the end step of player number 4 before it gets back to you. You would cast this in, you'd save all the mana up, which is already scary in blue. Their assumption is that you're about to mess up their board. But this time what you're doing is you're saving up that mana for your own turn. The best thing about that is that if you need to put in like a, I'm going to cancel someone else's spell, or I'm going to interact with my opponent's stuff instead of playing this card because I just need to, you have the option by leaving your mana open anyways. And at the end of your final opponent, player 4's turn, on their end step, if you had not needed to play a card on their turn, tap 6, cast this, copy one card from each board, put it on yours, and then it'll go to your turn, your untap, then upkeep, at which point your creatures no longer have Summoning Sickness. At that point, they're able to tap for abilities, they're able to attack, so, because they came back to your upkeep, even though they existed for such a small amount of time. Alright, next we have Font of Magic, a 4-mana enchantment, another really good one. Instant and sorcery spells that you cast cost 1 generic less to cast for each time you've cast a commander from the command zone this game. What an amazing enchantment. So this is good because every time you cast your commander, of course, you get a commander tax you have to deal with. But the first time you cast it, you're not paying a commander tax the first time you play, but you're creating one. Because that commander tax is created when it leaves the command zone. So every time you cast it from the command zone, I should say, sorry. But every time you cast it from the command zone, the tax is added to that zone. When your commander goes back to the zone, you must pay that tax plus its original cost to play it back. So it's nice. Font of Magic allows you to cast spells cheaper for having played your commander the first time, even though you didn't have to pay a tax. You did generate one. So I like Font of Magic a lot because there's some funny stuff you can do with it. Next we have Gale's Redirection, a 5-mana instant. You exile target spell, and then you roll a d20 and add that spell's mana value to the card. On a 1 to 14 total, you may cast the exiled card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast a spell. Okay, well, that's pretty good because what's really good about that is, well, okay, it's a 5-mana counter spell that you can then, so I'm used to counter spell being a 2-mana spell. So for the other 3 generic mana you're paying at that point, you have the ability to play that spell whenever you want to. And exiling is better than just countering it anyways because there are less odds that your opponent can get it back to interact with it. On a 15 plus, you may cast the exile card without paying its mana cost for as long as it remains exiled. Now that's the effect you're really going for. So it incentivizes you to counter a spell that costs a lot. So I'm thinking probably a creature at that point. But yeah, there's some crazy stuff you can do with this, so I think this is a really good counterspell. And what's really good, so I run a Dimir commander deck. These are just cards I want in my deck. Every time I'm getting excited about a card, it's like, oh, I want this card. So, bear with me on that. Alright, next we have an Orb of Dragonkind. We have an orb for every color, it looks like. So this is the blue one. Oh man, I know this is like a stone color or something, but I'm not good at this. So, Lapis? Okay, wow, I really don't even know it. Lapis? I don't know. Orb of Dragonkind. It is blue. For 3 mana, it's an artifact. You can tap it to add a blue mana to your mana pool, and when you spend this mana to cast a dragon creature spell, scry 2. Okay. Yeah, I mean, okay, that's not bad. I get it. I like dragons. I just, the blue one's never exciting. I mean, there are a couple really good ones, but I have trouble with the blue dragons. We have the Moonshine Pixie, a 4-mana fairy, but you can go on an adventure at instant speed for 2 mana. Up to 3 target creatures gain flying until the end of the turn. And for the creature itself, it's a 2/2 flyer that when it enters the battlefield, you draw cards equal to the number of opponents who were dealt combat damage this turn. Alright, I still like the combo. The adventure helps with the creature. But it's a 4-mana 2/2, so you're going to want to make sure you draw 2, maybe 3 cards. If you can draw 3, that's ideal, because if you make it go on an adventure, that makes it cost even more. So 3 cards would be ideal. Next we have Renari, the Merchant of Marvels, a 4-mana 2/4 legendary dragon artificer. You may cast dragon spells and artifact spells as though they had flash, and this is a commander that can choose background. Yeah, that's really good, and I can definitely see this being run in blue decks, for sure. And in draft, it's really good as your commander even. So yeah, the background just is adding flavor to this. That's a good one. And it counts as a dragon, and it's helping you cast more dragons. Alright, yeah, this is really good. And I can also see this being added into a lot of dragon decks anyways. So in Constructed it's good, in draft it's good. I'd say in Constructed it's not good as a commander, but it is a good card. Next we have Sailor's Bane, a 9-mana 7/7 dragon turtle that costs 1 generic mana less to cast for each card that you own in exile and in your graveyard that's an instant, sorcery, or has an adventure on it. And this turtle has Ward 4 on it. So a 7/7, you want to cast it for, I mean, ideally less than 7 mana. Ward 4 makes it to where if you cast it for 7, it's not a big deal, though. So if you can get it down to 6, that would be ideal. So you want to have at least... So you just need 3 cards for that. Yeah. Alright, next we have the Sapphire Dragon. A 7-mana dragon that is a 5/6 with flying, of course. It can go on an adventure at instant speed for 3 mana, counter target non-creature spell. Ooh, gosh, that's bad. Whenever this attacks or blocks, scry 2. Okay. I mean, a dragon is dragony. I mean, it's a 5/6 flyer, but for 7 mana? Like I said, I typically budget 6 mana for a dragon, so... I don't know. Next, we have Tomb of Horrors Adventurer. In other words, someone who hates themselves. A 6-mana 4/4 elf monk that when it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. And whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you copy it. And if you've completed a dungeon, copy that spell twice instead. You may choose new targets for the copies. Yeah, no, that's a really good card. 6 mana? Yeah, no, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's hard to get. It's hard though because 6 mana is really expensive to get a card out, and it will be dealt with as quickly as they can. But I like the effect enough to where I think it's still a good card. Copying spells is just incredibly strong. Well, that does it for our blue cards. That moves us over to black. We'll start with the Agent of the Shadow Thieves. A 2-mana background. Commanders you own have, whenever this creature attacks the player, if no opponent has more life than that player, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and it gains Death Touch and Indestructible until the end of the turn. Yeah, okay, that's good. It's a nice way to protect your commander and buffs it up. Next, we have Ambition's Cost, a 4-mana sorcery, draw 3, and lose 3 life. Yeah, that's a good card, for sure. Yeah. Drawing is strong. It's worth the 3 life. It's worth the 4 mana. I'll do it. Next, we have Blood Money, a 7-mana sorcery. Destroy all creatures. For each non-token creature that's destroyed this way, you create a tapped treasure token. Yeah, oh, that's strong. Yeah, another good one. And board wipes are always strong in Commander. Yeah, this is good. Call to the Void, a 5-mana sorcery. Each player secretly chooses a creature that they control, and then a creature that they don't control. Then, those choices are revealed. Destroy each creature chosen this way. Oh, man, that's almost a board wipe for 5 mana. Yeah, really good. It's a little complicated to work with. At this point, you probably, need index cards? Write them down or something? Or you pick up... No, you can't pick up all the creatures, because then your opponents need to interact with your board as well, because they need to secretly choose one. And they can't do it, they can't reveal their choices after all the other choices are revealed, so I think this ends up being... I mean, it's a really good spell. It's just complicated because you want to run, like, index cards and pencils now. You have to roll D20s for other cards. So it's just a little bit extra, but I like it. So I think it's a good card. For 5 mana, you're destroying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably at least, off the board. Probably 3 of which are yours. But, of course, you're hoping that some people have double-picked the same card on your board, so... Maybe you might pick the biggest threat on your board because you know that's what they're all going to pick, and then you just have 1 creature die. Next, we have Pact Weapon, a 4 mana. Ooh, it's a mythic rare equipment. As long as a Pact Weapon is attached to a creature, you don't lose the game for having 0 or less life, which is really good in black because you're paying your own life points oftentimes. Whenever the equipped creature attacks, you draw a card and reveal it, and then the creature gets +X/+X until the end of the turn. You lose X life, X is the card's mana value, and to equip this card to a creature, you discard a card. Okay. I don't really think that this is that good of a card. I mean, you maybe run it just to not lose the game, I guess? I don't know. Meh. Alright, next we have Cyverus the Nightmare Speaker, a 4-mana 3/3 legendary Snake Cleric Warlock. It's a lot of words on that. So it's a commander that can choose background, and if you tap it, sacrifice another creature or an artifact, for each opponent you mill a card, and then return that card from your graveyard to your hand unless that player pays 3 life. Oh, this is really good in a mill deck, especially a self-mill deck, because it being in your graveyard, even if they pay 3 life and keep it in your graveyard, can be really strong in any deck that splashes black in it. And finally, we have Vrock, a 5-mana bird demon. It's a 3/3 with flying. And at the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, each opponent loses 3 life. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have synergy with blinking, but I feel like it's pretty expensive synergy. Alright, that does it for our black cards. That moves us to red, and we get to start with Amber Gristleomal, a 3/3 legendary dwarf cleric who allows you to choose background if it's your commander. It has haste, and whenever this attacks, you may discard your hand, and if you do, draw a card for each player being attacked. Okay, that's not bad. It's really good. Red doesn't have a lot of card draw, so it's worth it for, unfortunately, for red. Then we have the Amethyst Dragon, a 6-mana 4/4 dragon with flying and haste. It can go on an adventure at sorcery speed for 5 mana and deal 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. Okay, I guess. 5 mana, 4 damage is just at sorcery speed. That's expensive, and it being divided means you want it to be dealt to tokens, because you do want to remove more than one thing off the board if you're doing 5 mana spell. Yeah, I think this is probably just a 6 mana 4/4 flying and haste, and the adventure's not all that good. And it's a dragon. You want to have synergy with other dragons, so. Next we have Baulder, a 5-mana 5/5 demon, mythic rare. It is flying, and whenever it attacks or dies, you choose one or more, and then each mode must target a different player. First mode, target opponent draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards at random. Next one, target opponent sacrifices a non-token artifact. And last one, Baulder deals damage to target opponent equal to the number of cards in their hand. I think some funny stuff you can do with this card, so I like it. It's a little complicated to wrap my head around, but I like it. Next we have the Orb. This one is Carnelian Orb of Dragonkind, a 3-mana artifact. Tap it for red mana. If it was spent to cast a dragon spell, then it gains haste until the end of the turn. Yeah, pretty standard for red, give things haste. Then we have Descent into Avernus, a 3-mana enchantment. Surprisingly, this is not a mythic rare, it's just rare. At the beginning of your upkeep, put 2 Descent counters on Descent into Avernus. Then each player creates X treasure tokens, and Descent into Avernus deals X damage to each player, X being the number of Descent counters on this card. So the deeper you get into Avernus, the more dangerous it gets for everyone else. I like that. It's very flavorful. Avernus is a good adventure in Dungeons & Dragons, so it's really cool. Next we have the Elturel Survivors, a 4-mana 0/4 Tiefling Peasant. It has Trample, it has Myriad, and as long as this is attacking, it gets plus X power, X being the number of lands the defending player controls. Wow! Yeah, that's a good card. Definitely a good card. It's a Tiefling Peasant, so not a lot of synergy, but it's really good. Alright, next we have Fang Dragon, a 7-mana dragon. But for 2 mana, it goes on an adventure at sorcery speed, dealing 1 damage to each creature that you don't control, and it's a 6/3 with flying. We may have already looked at this card. We've seen more dragons now, and now we know there's a chance for this to get haste. A 6/3 flyer with haste would be really good for 7 mana. A 6/3 flyer for 7 mana is not exciting. Again, I always budget 6 mana for these dragons. Now we're going up to 7, so... In Constructed, there's ways to discount your dragons, so I think that's what's going on here, is that the idea is that if you're running a dragon tribal, they're already pretty strong because of those discounts. I just feel like by itself, I'm trying to evaluate these cards, and that makes it really difficult. So, a little expensive, but it's a good card. Alright, now we also have Ganix Astral Hunter, a 5-mana dragon. It's a 3/4 with flying. Whenever it or another dragon enters the battlefield under your control, you get to create a treasure token. and it also allows you to choose a background. Yeah, but as your commander, this is really expensive. Like I told you guys before, I think 4 mana is about the sweet spot for a commander. But I could see this being run as your commander for 5 mana. I think this card is good. It's expensive for a 3/4 flying. Funny enough, it is still cheaper than most dragons. I budget 6 mana typically, so not bad. Alright, next we have Gut, the True Soul Zealot, a 3 mana Goblin Shaman, legendary. It's a 2/2 that allows you to choose the background. Whenever you attack, you may sacrifice another creature or an artifact, and if you do, you create a 4/1 black skeleton creature token with menace that's tapped and attacking. That's really good, especially with it having menace. So, this is a good goblin, and I haven't seen a lot of goblin synergy in this, but goblins are a strong tribal deck, so this is just another way to make them stronger, and I think to incentivize a red-black deck. So, next we go back to Avernus with Karlach, Fury of Avernus, a 5 mana 5/4 legendary tiefling barbarian who allows you to choose a background. Whenever you attack, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap all attacking creatures. They gain first strike until the end of the turn, and after this phase, there is an additional combat phase. Wow, that's a strong card, and as a commander, absolutely worth it. Next we have Popular Entertainer, a 2 mana background that gives commanders, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, go target creature that player controls. Okay, not exciting. Next we have Street Urchin, a 2 mana background, and the commander gets, for 1 mana and you sacrifice another creature or an artifact, this creature deals 1 damage to any target. Okay. I mean, it's repeatable, so yay, but again, you want this to be, and I feel like you want this to be stronger. Alright, next we have Thunder Wave, another popular spell, a 4 mana sorcery, roll a d20. For 1 to 9, it deals 3 damage to each creature. On a 10 to 19, you may choose a creature, and it deals 3 damage to each creature not chosen this way. A nat 20, it deals 6 damage to each creature your opponents control. Yeah, really powerful. Oh, love this spell. Alright, next we have the Two-Handed Axe. It's an equipment. You can go on an adventure at instant speed with it. For 2 mana, target creature you control gains double strike until the end of the turn. The equipment itself is a 3 mana, 2 mana equip, 3 mana cast. Whenever equipped creature attacks, double its power until the end of the turn. Okay, that's not bad. You want to give it trample or something, but yeah. Next we have Weil, Blade of Frontiers, a 2 mana 1/1 legendary human warlock that allows you to choose a background. If you would roll 1 or more dice, instead roll that many dice plus 1 and ignore the lowest roll. Oh, it's rolling with advantage. That's really cool. And then whenever you roll 1 or more dice, put a +1/+1 counter on Wild Blade of Frontiers. Yeah, this is definitely a commander I would run. Human Warlock or not, I mean, I would run it because if I build a Dungeons and Dragons commander deck, I am rolling dice. I am casting spells to roll dice. So this is a commander I would run, and I don't even care what my next background is. Unless it helps me roll more dice, this is my commander. And that does it for red. That moves us over to green. Alright, unsurprisingly, we have the Emerald Dragon. So for 3 mana, I can go on an adventure at instant speed. Counter target activated or triggered ability from a non-creature token. Or source, sorry, non-creature source. I'm so used to saying that, non-token creature. A non-token source. That's really strong. Especially in green, by the way, because green typically doesn't have much counter. And for 6 mana, this is a 4/4 flying trample. Yeah, there we go. See, this is what I'm talking about. Alright, good dragon. And it's good that they're putting it in green too, because green dragons are apparently a bigger deal now. Now we also have the Jade Orb of Dragonkind, a 3 mana artifact that taps for a green mana, and when you spend mana to cast a dragon creature spell, it enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it and gains hexproof until your next turn. Yeah, really powerful orb. I like it. Alright, we also have Jaheira, Friend of the Forest, a 3 mana 2/3 legendary human elf druid. It allows you to choose a background and gives tokens that you control tap to add a green mana. Imagine a deck that runs Bootlegger's Stash, a green a green artifact for 6 mana. Lands you control have the ability to tap and create you 1 treasure token. Now you have her as your commander. You then have her on the board, and instead of having to sacrifice your tokens, you can use their apparently now secondary ability to tap them to add a green mana. So tap all your mana and create untapped tokens. Tokens don't have summoning sickness unless they're creatures. Immediately you can tap them for green mana. So they're not being sacrificed. You're just doubling your land drops. So I love generating that much mana. And then you never have mana problems again. And that's why we love Commander. Because there's so many crazy things you can do like that. Next we have the Owl Bear Cub, which is a 3 mana, 3/3 bird bear. That says whenever it attacks a player who controls 8 or more lands, look at the top 8 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield tapped and attacking that player, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. Wow, that is a good card for green especially. So I'm not sure if it's going to fit well in, I think, draft. Maybe it will. No, maybe it does, because, yeah, getting a creature out at all is pretty strong. So, yeah, pretty good. And that does it for our green cards. Not a lot of green to go over, but some pretty good ones. That moves us to multicolored. Let me see what we have. Okay, so next we have the Council of Four. This is a 5 mana, 3 generic, 1 white, 1 blue, a 0/8 legendary human noble. Whenever a player draws their second card during their turn, you get to draw a card. And whenever a player casts their second spell during their turn, you get to create a 2/2 white knight creature token. Yeah, great card. Yep, I could see this being run in anything that has blue-white. White needs more card draw, but if you're mixing it with blue already, then it's pretty safe to say you're set. But having another way of doing that and creating tokens is pretty good. I don't think you run this as your commander. I think it's too slow, but it's a good card. Then we have the Han Hansen Chaos Crafter, a 3 mana, 1 red, 1 white, 1 black, a 3/3 legendary gnome artificer with haste, allows you to tap it, sacrifice an artifact creature to create 2 treasure tokens, and if you tap them, sacrifice a non-creature artifact, create 2 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature tokens. So the abilities combo together, so that's really good. I'm not sure if we looked at this card already. Lozen the Dragon's Legacy, a 5 mana, 3 generic, 1 blue, 1 red, 4/2 legendary dragon shaman. It has flying, and whenever you cast an adventure spell or a dragon spell, this deals damage equal to the spell's mana value to any target that isn't a commander. I already talked about how good mana value is over the converted mana cost. But I also think that now we've seen more dragons, this synergy makes a lot more sense now. And it makes sense why you're not dealing it to commander, because you would just instantly kill. Every dragon is apparently 7 mana, it seems. So we now know that on average this is dealing probably about 7 damage every turn that you have a dragon spell being cast. So I think that ends up making the dragon spells costing more make a lot more sense to me. So I wanted to touch that for a moment. Okay, so next one is Nine Fingers Keen, a 4 mana, 1 generic, 1 black, 1 green, 1 blue. It's a 4/4 legendary human rogue with menace. The ward is that they have to pay 9 life. Whenever this deals combat damage to a player, you look at the top 9 cards of your library. You may put a gate card from among them onto the battlefield. Then, if you control 9 or more gates, put the rest into your hand. Otherwise, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Wow! Wow. Yeah, this could be this is a commander. You run this in a commander deck with a bunch of gates. Holy bejesus. Yeah, this is a good card. I like it. It does some crazy stuff. And that does it for a multicolored. Once again, there's no more colors to go over, so we're going to go straight to artifacts and see if we have something there. And right off the bat we do. We have the Arcane Encyclopedia, a 3 mana artifact where if you tap it, draw a card. Yeah, I like it. It pays for itself eventually, doesn't it? No, it doesn't, because you always have to pay 3 mana and draw a card. 3 mana card draw is good. 6 mana draw 1 card not so good. And you know what? Honestly, I draw a card for 1 mana oftentimes, so I don't even know if this is that good. Yeah, I like card draw though, and it's wizardy, and I like wizards. Alright, well, I think this card is probably too slow, but maybe people can do some crazy stuff with it, like trigger an ability more than once. Now we have the Burnished Heart, a 3 mana, 2/2 artifact creature elk. 3 mana, sacrifice it, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. Yeah, okay. I thought you were going to get 1 land. I'm like, for 3 mana? No thank you. But okay, I can see that. Next we have Campfire, which I love to see a thematic card like this. It's a 1 mana artifact. If you tap 1 mana and tap it, you gain 2 life. tap 2 mana, tap it, and exile it to put all commander cards you own from your command zone and from your graveyard into your hand, and then shuffle your graveyard into your library. Yeah, I mean, these are some pretty good effects, I guess. So, not bad. Next, we have the Drillworks Mole, a 1 mana, 1/1 artifact creature mole. Tap 2 mana, tap it, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and a +1/+1 counter up to 1 target commander creature that you control. Okay. Not bad. It's probably too slow to go into a commander deck, but I see it. Next, we have the Iron Mastiff, a 4 mana, 4/4 artifact creature dog, that whenever it attacks, you roll a d20 for each player being attacked, and ignore all but the highest roll. Oh my gosh. Yeah, makes sense as a Mastiff then. Alright, on a 1/9, it deals damage equal to its power to you. Okay, that's bad. On a 10/19, it deals damage equal to its power to defending player. On a nat 20, it does it to every opponent. Yeah, this is not a bad card, and I would probably run it just for an excuse to roll dice anyways. 4 mana, 4/4 is that's what you'd expect for 4 mana, and then the rolling d20 is just extra. And if you're rolling it for each opponent that's being attacked, then you want to combo it with Myriad, and then you can make sure you're rolling a bunch of dice. And then, of course, I'm running the commander that lets me roll an extra dice. So I'm rolling enough dice to where I should be able to get the roll I need, so. Okay, oh, and wait, also, I'm rolling a d20 for each one that's being attacked, and I ignore everything except for the highest roll. I'm trying to think of how many times my commander would trigger. But, you know what, that's kind of complicated. We're going to move on to the next one. Meteor Golem for 7 mana, it's 3/3. Oh, man, the value. It's an artifact creature golem, enters the battlefield, destroy target non-land permanent and opponent controls. Yeah, but for 7 mana, you're just getting a 3/3 out of it? I don't know. So what is that, a 4 mana spell, destroy target non-land permanent and opponent controls, and then a 3 mana 3/3 vanilla? Yeah, there's no matter how I approach this, I'm not sure that's a good card. There are better removals out there, y'all. Next, we have the Mirror of Life tapping. A 4 mana artifact that whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it was cast, exile it, then return all of the permanent cards that have been exiled by this to the battlefield under their owner's control. Okay, fair enough. It's kind of a janky card, but I like it. Next, we have the Rug of Smothering, a 3 mana, 1/3 artifact creature construct. It is flying, and whenever a player casts a spell, they lose a life for each spell they've cast this turn. Wow, what an anti-spell casting deck. Gross! That's a good card, but I like to cast a lot of spells, so gross! That's not bad, though. But gross! Alright, that does it for our artifacts. I think for the lands, there was nothing new to go over. So, that does it for our artifacts. That does it for all of our cards. So, thank you for tuning in with us while we talk about the new cards that they've shown us for Battle for Baldur's Gate, the second Commander Legends set coming out. There are some crazy cards that were revealed today. So my hope is that there's some cards that maybe I missed over that are better than I think, and then there's some cards that are maybe not as good as I think. So drop a comment down below and let me know what you think. And until next time, later gamers.